Oh dear, I'm really not a fan of this one.
And Billy, you understand that you, the princess, and Simon are all in Mary.
Yes, sir.
And if Mary is sick, then you are sick too. All of you.
Yes, sir.
You want Mary to get better, right, Billy?
Yes.
So,
Do you ever have those films that you think you'd love because they seem right up your alley in terms of taste, and then you find that you just can't get into them?
The premise entices you in. You read some reviews that make out how good it is, and you might even catch some marketing and think, oh yeah, that's a film for me. That's how I thought about Session 9. There are so many elements to the film where I feel I should enjoy it, but there's just something so off about the production. It also constantly crops up on lists of underrated gems, best horror films of the 2000s, and it's become a cult classic. Over the years, it just made me think, what is it that I'm not seeing so many other people are?
It's hard to really say anything bad about it, but there's just this block in place.
A disengaged feeling I have from the film where I can't give myself over to it and enjoy it for what it is. There's just too many niggling issues for me. And I always give films more than one chance. Movies like Bronson and Raw I never really liked until a few watches, where I finally got it and it hit me just what made them so good. But here, over the years, I've forced myself to sit through Session 9 multiple times, and every time it's the same empty shrug of disinterest I feel once the credits roll. And I think now I can finally put into words what those issues are.
who am I speaking with?
Mary got a China doll from her mommy, and we can't find it now.
The film follows a team of asbestos cleaners who are on a big job in a former psychiatric hospital. One of the men finds some tapes with a series of interview sessions a doctor had with a former inmate with multiple personalities. As they do their job, there's internal conflicts, tensions rise, and eventually there's some spooky shenanigans.
I think this may be the only film I've seen with David Caruso in it, who you'll probably know from a certain crime scene investigation show.
When worlds collide.
One thing I will say is, the film looks great. There's a ton of really imaginative camera work and they do a lot with the setting they're given. There's just so much creativity to make the most mundane action seem more palatable. This shot of the stairs on the outside with a fence, just look at it. It's far more inventive than simply shooting him doing work.
Now, I can word it a million different ways, but at the end of the day, I simply found the film boring.
You okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Good first day, Gordo. Listen, Mike needs another hour with the Jenny. Carburetor's acting up.
The problem is, this is the entire movie. You're just watching them work or hang out at a very slow pace. Very occasionally something creepy might happen that, for the most part, they just ignore. If the characters aren't scared or threatened by this shit, then why should we? It isn't until the last 20 minutes where anything of any real substance happens. And then it hits you with a pretty confusing twist ending.
Oh, that's why they call it that.
There's no real setup. All this backstory about the patient on the tapes comes back to light, but it's so incoherent that it falls flat. There's this unexplainable disconnect between all the moving parts that never gels properly. And the film doesn't have an effective enough atmosphere to fall back on, to at least make you feel scared, even if you don't know what's going on.
I haven't a clue what's going on here, but I'll act like I do.
Outside of Mullen and Caruso, the acting isn't the best, and the interactions between these other guys comes across as wooden and stilted. One's a gambler, one's an intellectual, and one's a goofball. But beyond that, there just isn't much to them. Even Caruso doesn't have much going for him for most of the film, but he's so charismatic and in control that he elevates what little he has to work with.
Are you questioning my performance?
I don't know, should I be?
The audio is pretty odd too. There's some super stock sound effects you'd find more in a bad Steam Greenlight game rather than a full-blown horror film in here. Take these cars for instance. They sound really off, just listen to them whoosh by.
Billy's asleep, Mr. Doctor. He's asleep.
It's like something you'd hear a news channel's logo do during a transition than a vehicle flying past.
I don't know what else to say. The characters weren't interesting, and the storyline wasn't absorbing to me.
As I say, I thought this might be one of those films that takes a few viewings to really hit you, and then you get it. But I've seen this thing like 8 times now, and it's never gotten better. One of the best horror films of the 2000s? How many times do I have to watch it before it gets good? The narrative is uninteresting at best and incomprehensible at worst. It felt like 100 minutes of barely cohesive, aimless storytelling with a lame twist ending. I really didn't enjoy my time with it at all. Every time it's the same. I'm so uninvested in anything to be engaged. To be blunt, I found it a huge fucking bore. It's always a long drawn out challenge trying to hold my interest and make it to the credits. I'd have a better experience ripping my cock off and throwing it in the Clyde. At least I'd feel something.
Maybe you'll drink the Kool-Aid and find what others enjoy in this film, but for me, I've tried and tried, and this is simply one cult I won't be joining.